Welcome, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by our guest today for this part two discussion on outdoor learning and co-curricular activities in international schools. So among some of the topics we'll be touching on today, we'll be considering how to make outdoor learning accessible, how teachers and leaders can take their learning outdoors in the short term, and then how outdoor learning co-curricular activities can be integrated within CPD activities for teachers as well within the international school space. So yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by everybody. If we could do maybe a quick round of introductions. Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself and the school that you're at? Just on mute there, Thomas.
You never guessed this was my first time. Apologies, guys. Yeah, I'm at St George's International School in Switzerland, just on Lake Geneva. Been here since August. Previously, assistant head co-curricular at a very traditional public school in England. Really relishing the new opportunities of being in Europe, being by the lake, being near Verbier, and all the opportunities that brings.
Brilliant. Thanks, Thomas. Kenny, do you want to quick introduction of yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Kenny. I'm here at the Green School in Bali, and I'm currently doing sort of a mixed bag of classroom education outside the classroom, a bit of math and science combined with some adventure. So I'm happy to be here again.
Chris.
Hi, everyone. Chris Boyle. I'm the secondary principal at International School Dhaka in Bangladesh. Previously from working in Northeast China and originally in the States in expeditionary learning and outward bound schools. So I was really happy to come to a school that has a really strong tradition in experiential learning and took over coordinating the Week Without Walls trips and experiences, which we just finished and are planning the next round. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Brilliant. And Matt, founder and director of Polaris Outdoor, one of our partners. Great to have you as a guest host today. Do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes, I'm Matt, director at Polaris Outdoor. We run survival training for professionals and students anywhere on Earth, running trips, expeditions, and lots of personal development as well.
Fantastic. All right, great. So what I will do now is I'm going to hand over to Matt to kick off with the questions. And yeah, hope you guys have a fantastic conversation.
Okay. All right, welcome, guys. So let's kick off with the first question. And feel free to jump in whenever you want to add to the conversation. So let's have a talk about what strategies that you have used or you are using in your outdoor learning, and what kind of impact that's having on the students at the moment. Chris, do you want to maybe start us off?
Sure. Like a lot of schools around the world, the last year and a half has really represented a big change and a shift back to face-to-face learning after a period where here in Bangladesh we were closed for really 2 full years. And so the obvious impact that activities like extracurricular sports and the kind of big wow trips like our week-long Week Without Walls trips are having are just rebuilding community and connections. I think we're just seeing students, particularly this year, having been face-to-face and getting to grow and get to know each other, not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom, have a huge effect on well-being. We just have happier kids this year because we're able to offer so many more opportunities than we were able to in the prior year. So we've been back about a month from our Week Without Walls trips, which included all students in grades 6 through 10. And, kids are still talking about it. You still kind of walk through the hallways and bump into a group of 6th graders or 9th graders speaking about it. And they're still excited. And those are shared memories and stories that, they'll carry through graduation and honestly the rest of their life. And so it's just really built community here by taking the time and making sure that we value those experiences. We plan them. We make sure that the parents are on board as well. So yeah, it's been those outside of school experiences that have really solidified our community this year.
Thanks. I found that community is really important. Certainly when I was at school, I think community wasn't really something that was really kind of discussed and maybe not so much openly important, whereas today, the community and your personal well-being in an environment of learning is just as important as the learning itself in a lot of ways, or a catalyst for one another. So yeah, thanks for that. Kenny, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I was just going to jump in and give a current example, something I'm doing, and something I think every school can or should do is incorporating a bit of art with a bit of science and crossing over with a bit of getting outdoors and learning. And the example I'm doing right now, I've just created a course called Museum Arts, and we basically have a new space on campus that's going to be an environmental science class. But my idea was to make these, three-dimensional pieces of art that kids could handle and hold, and based on local flora and fauna, the local ecology, get outdoors and see what it is, but then have some sort of display that would be educational. So some sort of signage in the sort of a natural history museum feel. And it's going over really well. It's basically the kids choose what they want to do. So I've got everything. I've got one girl that's like really into pigs. So she's making pig ears and pig's feet, and she wants to learn about pig digestion. And so I'm encouraging that. I'm personally doing it myself. I'm making sort of a life-size reticulated python out of like toilet rolls, and I'm hoping to sort of paint it up and make a display about that. And I've got a couple of guys that are really excited about snakes. They made a couple of pitfall traps, and I was thinking about today, like, I don't really think they're going to catch anything, but it's just getting them excited about it and sort of the mystery, and they run out and check it every day and like, can we check our traps and see what we got? And today they didn't have anything, but they're still excited. I'm like, okay, that's, that excitement, the mystery, like, could we catch something? And so I don't know if, I know that most campuses are, not every campus has that opportunity, but doing stuff like that where you can go out and see the things, make some sort of art that combines a bit of natural history and science. I think the kids really get a lot from that. So I'm kind of excited about that new one that I'm doing.
Yeah, thanks. That's really cool. I think the future of learning is very much going to be probably more amalgamated when it comes to subject matters. That learning is probably going to be a bit more project based, I think, in the future, where maybe for the older students it might be, right, you're going to start a business, and that will involve art and media and maths and science and some geography and some economics, and you bring in all subjects together to be one, instead of kind of separating them out and making a dissemination, whereas that's kind of not what life is really, is it? So that's really good. And the students will be able to see the cross-curricular value in that as well, which is really cool. Thomas.
Yep. So just picking up on that, I think that it is really important to ask the kids and the children what they want to do. So obviously I was new to an international environment. So it was actually my wife said, well, just ask the kids what they want to do. So the very first thing I did, and the second tutorial, was do an electronic form and just go through, and from a co-curricular point of view, just so I could get a grip of what they were doing and just gain some interest. Now we're very lucky that because we're so close to the mountains, our sport and outdoor education curriculum is skiing. So the kids will go once a week or once a fortnight to Verbier. They have their ski lessons. They do all those kinds of things. But I was intrigued to find that with kids who feel that they're very academic, that there was very much a disconnect, and they didn't see the connection between their academic performance and their well-being and the opportunities that they would get to go and ski, free ride, go on ski trips, go on our trip that we have in October, which are field trips. They just feel that gets in the way of their academic performance, as opposed to something that would something that would enhance their well-being and enhance their ability to do well in their IB exams that they're sat in about 100 meters from where I'm sat now. And I think educating them about that strong link between the two has definitely made a difference and seen an upsurge in what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, actually, because when I've worked with students in academic environments that are very testing, kind of like some inner city suburbs that have really difficult schools, and you inject some outdoor activities, for example, or some kind of enrichment into that, you can actually see the results very quickly. That students, their enjoyment of school is connected to their academic achievement. So if you put some enrichment activities in there, they connect that with which connects that to enjoyment in school, and enjoyment in school then helps them to improve on their academic ability. So it's quite obvious to do that at the bottom end. When you're at the top end of education, it's a little bit different, because often many of the students are very driven and they're very self-motivated, and they want to get absolute top results. And like you said, some of them can see extracurricular activities as maybe an unneeded distraction. But I think you're right. I think if you get a balance between extracurricular and outdoor activities, and you help them to understand the value in that, it can definitely not only be enriching, but it can actually improve their academic abilities as well.
Well, just on that, so the one thing I would say, and I've said to our kids, is that the link between academic performance and co-curricular education is based in fact and based in academic research. So there's a study that I can send to you that Cambridge did just pre-COVID, that was published in 2019, done by Cambridge University, which is plastered everywhere, which says that their undergraduates who played sport and did other things other than academically, over the period of their study that they did themselves, did better in their exams by percentage point. So I think that one, and again, maybe I'm a little bit controversial in some of the things I might say to our pupils, like, if you don't do co-curricular, you're going to do worse in your exams. That isn't everybody's cup of tea, but I want to stimulate conversation with the parents and stimulate conversations with the pupils that we're having this argument, because we just can't have kids just being in the books all the time. So, I mean, it's not good for their well-being, it's not good for their sleep, and like I said, pushing the barriers of what can be achieved. And as I said, I think we're quite lucky here, because we do have quite an outdoorsy area. I think that in some areas of the world where more and more academics mean more and more success, or that's my view from the outside. I think that's more challenging for you guys, especially in Asia. That's my probably uninformed view from where you are there.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'd be definitely interested in seeing that paper. I've got a few which can pop out. I taught music for a little while, and it's a well-known fact that students who have peripatetic lessons in music, their academic ability is better than those of students with similar abilities who don't take music. And that's partly because of self-discipline, that they have to practice every day, and they get into that self-discipline role. But also it goes into what Kenny said, which is that inspiration side of it, that self-motivated link to something which is enjoyable as well as academic. And academic, of course, can be enjoyable, but bringing in the arts and the crafts and the kind of independent ideas that allow you just to kind of like show some art out of within yourself, it's got great value in it. Thanks for that, guys. Let's move on to the second question. This one's about short-term learning projects. What can be done outdoors now? What ideas have you got that either you're doing or that you could think, right, this week I'm gonna switch it up a little bit, I'm gonna do something? What have we got on that one?
I can jump in on that one. I get asked that quite often. It might be one of the most common questions I get asked. And the short, simple answer is take your literature lesson outside, read your book outside, write your poem outside. It doesn't take any special training or equipment, to do that sort of thing. Take your math lesson outside. especially if you can get these little portable whiteboards. You can do basically any math lesson you want, right outside your door. So that's the quick and simple one. Just get whatever normal classroom lesson you were gonna do, take it outdoors. So reading a poem, like you said, you've taught music before. Why not do a music lesson outside? And then other simple, quick, easy ones are like sound mapping. You can go outside and just map the sounds of your campus, natural and unnatural sounds. In regular mapping, mapping your campus. So that I get really excited because it's almost limitless. Like basically anything you could teach in a classroom, you can potentially take outdoors. And I call that the difference in outdoor education versus education outdoors. And that's how I sort of differentiate it. So you don't have to do outdoor education. You can just do education outdoors.
Yeah, you said that before, and I really like that because I think a lot of teachers are afraid to take education outdoors because they think they have to do outdoor education. And you're right, they don't. They can just take education outdoors and just run with it. So yeah, I like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, but my teachers at school are probably more on that spectrum. When someone's coming to work at the Green School in Valley, they very much know kind of what they're getting into. And my school is a sort of your traditional career, IB, MYP, or DP teacher. And so while I'm going to take this question in a slightly different direction, it may not be what we would do tomorrow or this week. It would be sort of how can we intentionally plan and support to get teachers to take those first steps to go outside. So we'll oftentimes dedicate, all or a portion of a faculty meeting where teachers are working in departments to say, hey, look at your units, look at what's going on. What's an opportunity that we could get you out in the local community or out on campus doing something, collecting data, whatever it is. Kenny gave some great examples. Something that feels quite low risk. And then great, after you've kind of arrived at that, what can we do to support you to kind of take any additional anxiety that might be there down? Because as you said, teachers are worried, they're afraid. I think especially post-COVID, they're very comfortable being back in their classroom. They feel really settled in there, and going outside might have an increase in anxiety. The other things we really try and do is at many international schools, certainly international schools in Asia, we in the expat community move on every 4, 5, 6 years. Certainly some stay longer than that. But the local staff has oftentimes been here since the day the school opened, which for ISD was, 20 plus years ago. So to really tap into them, they know the community the best. I want my visual arts teachers talking to our arts teaching assistants and members of the arts community to know when is there some really cool festival going on or art exhibition that they're going on, so that we can get out there in the community as well. Teachers typically really like that because it's still, an area that they have a lot of expertise. They've got perhaps someone who's local there to help out. So kind of from a planning standpoint, asking teachers to really intentionally look at opportunities within their curriculum to get out there and do fun stuff, and then being really supportive to help it happen so that they feel really good about it. They get that positive reward because the kids love it and they're more excited to go out there and do it again.
Yeah, I think that's dead on.
Can I jump in there? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go on, jump in there. That's great.
You just reminded me of something, Chris, and I think it's pretty interesting because, education outdoors doesn't necessarily have to be in a wilderness area or a forested area or a natural area. And what you reminded me of, one of the most popular things that I do and that we do is cooking. And so basically, to incorporate that into like experiential education is you take the kids to a local market, they bargain, they learn some language, they buy some ingredients, they come back and they learn a life skill with cooking. And for me, our kids love that. And it's just so popular. Anytime we offer any sort of cooking class, cooking lesson, local market visit, they raise their hands and jump on it. So yeah, you just reminded me of that. Sorry to interrupt, Matt.
No, that's fine. That's really good. You kind of said what I was going to say, really. I, as a teacher trainer, I found two main things that teachers or schools have kind of concerns with. One is lesson planning, and this touches on what Chris said. Teachers like, I'm a bit afraid to get outside. How do I plan it in? And it's like, well, if you're thinking about it, stuff will happen. So just think about it during your lesson plan. And we've already said this, you can literally just take a lesson outdoors, especially if it's, something that's quite simple, like you're reading some literature or something like that. And what I do sometimes when I was teaching, and we do this now with, of course, Polaris, is we'll take students outdoors and we'll show them the environment, and we'll amaze them about the environment that's outside. And one good example is inner city London schools, where they've got no green areas whatsoever. So we'll take the students outdoors, and we'll identify simple weeds that are actually really medicines and other things like that. And you can throw that in there as a lesson starter. And it doesn't really have to necessarily relate to the topic you're talking about, because it's all part of an education. That's really good. The other thing that I get asked a lot is facilities, and this kind of goes on what you were talking about, Kenny. Teachers get worried about, our outdoor space isn't adequate. Well, what do you actually need? And you can start off with, well, we're going to go out on the playground and we're going to sit down on the tarmac and we're going to just make a circle and work together. You could step it up and go to the management in the school and say, hey, could we put some benches outside? Can we pay for that? Is it possible to get some benches? And then, you could take it one step further and you could put a canopy if you've got clement weather. And, you could turn it into a permanent outdoor space that then teachers can almost timetable in to use around the school. And we've had that where we've shown teachers, why don't you just put a tarp up between these two buildings, drill a few holes in the wall, put a tarp up, and you can use that as an outdoor space for teaching and learning, whenever you want. And sometimes they become so popular that it has to be timetabled in. There's a sheet on the wall where they mark in, I want my lesson now, and it becomes a really popular thing. So that kind of enrichment is extremely simple. And I think often teachers, either they're very, very busy, of course, teachers are super busy, but also it's easy to take for granted that something like that has value. And if there's somebody who understands the value of it and then can kind of say, guys, there is value here. I know you've got that in your jobs, Kenny and Chris, after the conversations we've already had, you see the value in teaching teachers about taking the students outdoors. And then the teachers are learning as well, and then that becomes part of kind of daily life and general enrichment in the school. Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I'd add is that using the influential teachers and the role models within senior leadership to say, look, this is okay. I just think just making teachers feel at ease, as you've just described, I think I agree with everything that's said, but just using those teachers who the other teachers, the heads of department, heads of faculty, if we can empower them to buy into what we're trying to do, then others will follow. I think that given the workloads of teachers, it is very easy for them to just stay within the straight lines of convention, and asking them to step outside that is and recognizing that's a scary thing. But if those people who are within leadership positions are demonstrating those kinds of behaviors, then others will follow. It's got to start with at the top. It takes a very brave teacher just to not go, if that's not the convention within an environment, to just go and do that. I think it conjures up visions of Dead Poet Society and stuff like this, which historically that schools and education have been suspicious of.
Yeah, that can definitely happen. That actually leads very nicely into the next question, which is, what strategies have you implemented to include outdoor learning and co-curricular activities in CPD for teachers? And what you said is dead on. And I'll start off with one of this, because I did one of these a couple of weeks ago. A school in London asked us to do some teacher training, and we went into the school, and the teachers there was a whole day of CPD, and they'd been death by PowerPointed all day. And I went into the school early to see these teachers like kind of melting into their chairs in this lecture theatre after being, PowerPointed by different people that had come into the school. I'm not saying that a lot of the stuff wasn't interesting, but it was like the usual kind of thing. So we then took them out and we showed them how to light fire on the playground, and we were running fire races where the teachers were around with fire steels, lighting stuff on fire. And there was two really cool principles in with that. One, teaching them how to use the tool properly. Use a principle that we call all changes make big differences, and we then link that to their teaching practice. And instead of kind of hitting teachers with "you're not doing this" and "you're not doing that," so we flipped the teacher training on its head, and instead of talking about what are you not doing as teachers, which they get kind of hammered with a lot, it was, well, what are you doing that you could get rid of? Things like, do you talk too much in the classroom? What kind of little habits do you have which you could maybe take out of your teaching practice that allow the students to do a bit more learning or to learn more efficiently? And those tiny tweaks do often make really big differences for teachers. So linking an outdoor situation of learning for the teachers and then linking that to their teaching practice, it had great value, and they've asked us to come back and do some more in the future, which was really good. What have you guys got around CPD for teachers that either allow them to access the outdoor environment more, or even get into teaching teachers how to run their own trips or activities with outdoor curriculums?
Oh, so if I jump in there, I think that one of the things that I've found in an international setting is that these are people who are brave enough to move to places like Bali and Bangladesh, who are certainly braver than me being near Geneva. I think that these people, by their very nature, are into things, the outdoors world, that there's things that go on. And I think it's tapping into their passion and finding out what skills and what things we have that already exists within the staff. And then if you find out someone's into scuba diving or sailing or skiing or jumping out of aeroplanes or whatever it is that their thing they do in private, is that say to them, well, look, you've got a passion for that. How do I facilitate your passion for whatever your chosen outdoor activity is? Get them qualified, and then joining the dots, because whatever the outdoor activity is, the things that they're scared of are the risk assessment, the admin, these kinds of things, but they're generic skills. And one of the things I've tried to do in running co-curricular my previous school, and since I've been here, is take away the boring stuff and the stuff that they don't want to do, and leave them to enrich and be role models for the children in terms of, I really as a teacher, I really like scuba diving. Let me tell you about and share my passion for that, and then remove the really mundane stuff that they don't want to do. I think that's because that can be centrally done. That's an admin job, and then they can then go on trips and they can do all those other things in terms of doing that. And then they might bring their friends with them, their friends who aren't into scuba diving, who are teachers, who they're friends with socially, etc. And then it grows organically just by taking away the bit that they don't want to do.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's definitely true. And leadership in schools sometimes need to let teachers kind of breathe a little bit, have a little bit of breathing room, so they can not be just so caught up in their daily job, and actually think, actually, you know what, I do have the space and the energy to run a trip, and I like this. And having approachable management where you can go to them and say, I'll give up one of my weekends and I've got this idea, and having them being amiable to that, and allowing you to put yourself out there. I think that's great to have an environment that allows you and also encourages you to do that. So thanks.
But just on that, sorry, just one very quick point on that. But I think that what's really important within schools is that if we can create a link between academic performance and outdoor education and the benefits that it brings, like, I think that we need to be able to create lesson time and have a culture where if someone is taking a school trip to somewhere and they're going to take 2 or 3 days off out of academic time to go and do something that will clearly benefit the children, that's only going to create more teachers who want to do things, because like teachers who work really, really hard already, if you then say to them, well, you're not going to have your weekend because you're responsible for these children. One of the things I think education will definitely needs to learn is that it's not mutually exclusive. It's not academics or outdoor education or co-curricular, whatever you want to call it. I think that we have to create a culture within schools that a child missing 2 days of lessons sat there in rows while someone's teaching them, they're not losing academic performance from that. And I think that is making it as easy as possible with teachers to do that. And then other teachers within the staff understanding that teacher X is taking children Y up a mountain or on a trek or whatever they're doing. Those things should happen during lesson time and during the week, because it's cheaper, so it makes more parents are able to do it, etc., rather than constantly putting things in teachers' holidays and then their weekends.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a whole nother conversation around that, definitely, about certainly way the British education system is going. And I did a little talk a while ago about the new implementations with the internet and AI and how that's changing everything very, very quickly. And I think in a few years' time, the education system as we know it will need to change to kind of catch up with all that kind of technology. But I think you're right. The balance of enrichment and education. We're in the future, I think we're looking at, instead of creating individuals who can regurgitate information, which isn't really needed anymore, we're looking at creating young individuals who have skills, have passion, and also have attributes that complement the building of a kind of harmonious society. And those are attributes that you can't really quantify on a piece of paper. You're right. You've got to take them out midweek. It becomes part of school time. And Kenny is already doing this. He's got tons of examples of this, where he's taking them out midweek and they're learning how to be, not how to know something. And learning to be is where the value is, definitely. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And just to go back to that question you're asking about the CPD, what I've found really, really helpful is just taking teachers on hikes around campus and pointing out things, whatever plants we have, whatever insects we have, whatever birds we have, and just saying, hey, I don't know everything, but I know something. So I may not know the name of this plant, but I can tell you maybe a botanical term for the leaf shape, or I can tell you a little bit about, photosynthesis, or maybe I can look at it and see what insects have been eating it. And I may not even know the name of it, which is a lot of times what people focus on, just knowing what that plant is. And then incorporating a lot of the local knowledge, like our gardeners, they know more than I do because they live there and they work there. And just asking them, what is this and what's it used for? And, the other day we were hiking around and I learned about a new type of, I think it's a ginger that you can use for shampoo. And I was like, well, I actually don't really need that myself. But they showed me how you could squeeze it and it gets soapy and you can shampoo your hair. And I was like, well, that's a really cool thing that I didn't know before. And one of the locals pointed that out to me, as we were hiking around. So I was teaching them, but then letting them teach me. So I think that's a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of like what you were talking about before as well, Kenny, teaching them cooking outdoors. You can kind of reverse engineer that all the way back to plants and growing. And you can, because everyone needs to learn how to cook, as a part of daily life and routine. But you can reverse engineer that into learning and say, right, well, this is what we're cooking. These are the attributes that these vegetables and these things have. And this is how to grow them. And you can kind of reverse engineer that into, well, actually, here's a life skill that in the future of this world is very useful, because it's an environmentally friendly way of doing things, because you're reducing carbon footprint, because you're not buying resources and foods that have been shipped halfway around the world. It's organic and it's pesticide free. And then you can go onto the cooking side again, and it brings it full circle to this kind of it's life, isn't it? It's, I know where my foods come from and I'm educated on it and I know how to utilize it and use it. And that brings the self-sufficiency, the personal self-sufficiency angle into creating young people who are powerful, self-sufficient and ready to go. And that's what we want to do as teachers. We want to create young people who are self-sufficient, energetic, and confident. And all of what you're doing there links straight into that. So that's really good. Anyone want to add anything to that before we move on?
Even before somebody sets foot on campus, when I'm recruiting teachers, throughout the interview process, I'm embedding kind of questions and conversations that sort of get at a teacher's comfort level in working with students in outside of the classroom context. I've always got my eye out for teachers who might be great Week Without Walls leaders, who are going to want to coach a bunch of sports or take kids on nature hikes or whatever it might be. So as a school, if it's something that you say you value, experiential learning, you've got to own up to that in the recruiting process. Sure, first and foremost, I probably need a really great DP, physics teacher, because those are pretty darn hard to find. But I'd also love to have one that, at his previous school, led an 8th grade trip or things like that. And so prior to even getting them on campus, I'm looking for those types of teachers that really love connecting with kids outside of the traditional classroom environment. And then, we don't have a grand program here in terms of teacher training. When I was in the States, we all got our wilderness first responders, our WFRs, and we're able to get grant money for that because it's quite an expensive course. But here we do some in-house PD, really helping to train up trip leaders, just on best practices on kind of day-to-day running of multi-day trips in terms of safety protocols and communication, really learning to embed reflection, and things that help make trips run more smoothly, less stress. And then that often leads them to come back with a newfound set of skills and confidence. And then I find when I post an internal position, hey, I need an extended essay coordinator because our extended essay coordinator is moving on after 6 years. Someone will say, hey, because I had a good time and I felt good about the Week Without Walls trip, I'm going to apply for that EE position. So I think that's one of the other benefits for the teachers getting the PD, and maybe even more importantly, the experience, is it can really build their confidence and choose them to take a risk to apply for something else that's really going to benefit the school long term. That's something that I've seen just this year following our trips, which has been really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, Chris, looking at what you do and your website, one of the other things is that if you're doing a great trip or you've got a really great activity week and you're advertising that, you're going to attract teachers who love that kind of stuff. And if you're not doing any of that stuff, then I'm not saying you'll attract stagnant teachers, that's the wrong word, but you'll attract teachers who aren't interested in that stuff. But if you're displaying either a desire or you've got some of these things going on, even if you're using an outdoor provider like us, and you're working your way to building it on in-house production, you guys have got a Borneo expedition, that looks amazing, I'd love to be a part of that. And in interview, that kind of carries it through as well. So instilling that in the school as part of the ethos or the kind of the furniture of the school is a really powerful thing to attract in teachers who are either good at it or who want to get involved. So brilliant. Yeah.
And I would add to that, teachers with kids, we love having families here. Bangladesh can be a challenging place to live, especially Dhaka. It's kind of this big, urban sprawling city. Families are more stable. And so not only the teachers saying, hey, I really maybe want to go on that trip or lead that trip, but their 7th or 8th grade kids saying, whoa, I really want to do that Vietnam trip, or I really want to go to Cambodia, is also, a reason that we might draw potentially really great teachers into our school and community. So you're absolutely right. It's a recruiting tool for new students, but it's also in many ways a recruiting tool for new families who do match kind of who we are and what we're looking for.
Brilliant. Let's move this on. The next question talks about personal well-being, happiness, which is really close to my heart and the way we do things. Have you got any examples of specific programs that link outdoor learning co-curricular to academic achievement and resilience in the students? I know, Tom, you've already touched on this a bit. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this is my real thing. And also, I really enjoy trying to prove it to people who don't believe, who ignore and don't share my philosophy on this. So there's a couple of things. First one is trying to find, if you just Google academic performance and well-being against whatever, you can find all sorts of academic studies, but there's a couple that I use to try and, when I argue with people about this. The other thing that there's chap whose name I can't remember, but I can find quite easily. He used to be the deputy head co-curricular at Loughborough Grammar, and he did a whole big study where he tried to measure kids' well-being, like how often did they read a book, how often did they sleep okay, all these kinds of things, and then measured that against what they did, what their co-curricular responsibilities were they in the choir, the play. I did a very pared out version of that, where all I did was take the top 5 performing children from every year group academically and in terms of effort grades, and just plotted that against the what they did from a co-curricular point of view. So how many kids who were the most able academically and tried the hardest. Now, some of them were the same child, and then how many of them were in the play, played rugby, played cricket, were in what they call CCF, the cadets, the outdoor education. Did they do the Duke of Edinburgh Award? I mean, and it's beyond question that the kids who did worse academically and tried hard less in the classroom did fewer co-curricular things. I mean, it's so I mean, like, so yeah, so those kinds of things. But the thing is, schools are a constituency of one, and if the principal believes in what you're doing, everybody else takes their lead from them. So in terms of convincing people, in terms of proving trends, if you can convince your principal, and I'm very lucky that I work for a series of principals, because I probably wouldn't work for them. They wouldn't. More importantly, they wouldn't work with me if the principal doesn't believe in what we clearly believe in. But yeah, it is really hard to do. I mean, having a good co-curricular software. There are plenty out there, but having good co-curricular software where you can track how many sports matches they've played in, do they do all these things? I think that definitely helps, though.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of where my passion is as well, actually, and that's what spurred me to leave mainstream education and run it solo in this, because we were tracking students who were doing the outdoor education program that we'd invented in the school, and we were comparing them to kids of similar ability with similar SATs results who weren't on the program, and we were seeing academic increases of up to 30% over a 3-year period, and that absolutely linked to their personal enjoyment and their well-being in school. And a lot of these kids were the kind of like the middle of the rung students who kind of went under the radar. They didn't need a lot of academic help at the lower end. They weren't really advanced academically like the top end and the gifted and talented, but they were this like middle group that just kind of trudged along. And we saw really big advancements in that. And the personal development stuff that we did, we've got booklets and all sorts that we do on our expeditions and our different programs that really get them to kind of nail down what it is they're learning inside of themselves and then apply it. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that. And Chris, you're doing some stuff with this, aren't you?
Yeah, and as much as I love the big data and really good debates, I found with our community, it's the personal stories, oftentimes from moms within our community, that help to convince a skeptical parent. I'm taking this a little different direction than Thomas, who I know is thinking about staff and thinking about the way you can get parents on board with just them sharing with each other about the incredible experiences their kids have by participating in a sport or going on a trip or doing a really awesome, CCP or after school activity. We have a really awesome primary school bird watching CCP right now. That's just like the talk of the school. It's so cool. So simple, but so cool. The parents who hear from another parent, within their community that says, my child participated in this and was better, was more confident, was changed, is oftentimes all the convincing, somebody who might be skeptical or resistant, or might have that mindset, as you're absolutely right, Thomas, that we deal with in Asia, that we just need to be in the classroom all day, and then they just need to go home and have 5 hours of tutoring, and then 5 hours more of study. There's going to be that parent that says, no, this experience is what shaped my child into, a well-rounded, amazing perfect, ready to go to university. So I tap into my powerful mobilizers in my community to tell good stories about the positive impacts on kids' well-being. And that's worked really well in my context in South Asia.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We can kind of relate to that. We did a parents' evening last night, which is a celebration evening on the back of our Arctic expeditions that we run for a number of schools up in northern Finland, where they do this really cool Arctic training. And the two of our we give out prizes to students, and they don't know they're getting these prizes, but we give them out to those that are really putting themselves out there, usually being selfless and serving. And funny enough, this year the two top prize winners were siblings, a brother and a sister. And at the celebration evening last night, I went up to the parents and I said, your kids are a massive credit to your parenting skills, and I kind of like thanked them for just being awesome parents. Now, what was quite interesting was that those two parents, they're actually getting divorced, or that they're having problems, and I actually already knew this because one of the teachers had told me, but I needed to say that because I thought it was important to be said because it was true. And the parents both looked at each other and you could see their faces. I'm not saying I'm a marriage counselor and I'm fixing people's marriages, but like you said, Chris, the extended value in this kind of stuff to parents and families, it's absolutely brilliant. And for me, it's I think for a lot of us, it's why we do it, isn't it? That we're changing lives in really positive ways. And it sounds really mushy and a bit cheesy, but why would you be a teacher doing all this hard work if you weren't getting kicks out of it somewhere? And I think that's where we get a lot of our kicks. So, Kenny.
Yeah, I'll just give a couple of sort of pragmatic examples of things that we do, and I think a lot of schools can do. Every Tuesday we have Mindfulness Tuesday, and we always say it should be Mindfulness Monday, but it is on a Tuesday, and it's basically during our homeroom time, which we call pod time. So like, the first 15 minutes of the day, they do some sort of breathing techniques or mindfulness, and that time's dedicated to that. And every day at 2:00, without fail, we have a gong, and everyone has to stop literally in their tracks and just take a mindful moment. And it's a really interesting thing to witness because everyone in the campus honors it. And if you're a guest on campus and don't know, people will tell you, like, quiet, like listen, and like basically give thanks, practice a bit of gratitude for about 2 minutes. And then after the third gong, you're free to carry on. So it's interesting to see this hive of activity and then stops on cue, as soon as you hear the gong. And then, 2 minutes later, everyone's back to business. And then a couple other things that I think really attribute or contribute to well-being are things people don't think about. Like, we don't have single-use plastics on campus, and that's well-being for the environment. But I also think it's good for us to handle our foods wrapped in banana leaves. It's good to handle natural materials. Of course, our campus is bamboo, but just seeing these natural colors, natural materials, I think that really contributes to your own sort of health and well-being, just seeing, and that we don't have, disposable throwaway plastic things. And for me, that's connected as well to your own personal well-being. And then of course, I was just remembering there's a bacteria in soil that's an antidepressant. So just handling soil, just getting soil under your nails literally is good for your health. And, that's one of those things you can Google, but I've looked it up a few times. I forget the name of the bacteria, but yeah, just digging in the dirt makes you happy.
Brilliant. I love that. Let's finish off with, we've talked about loads of benefits, of course, of outdoor programs and the way they work. What could be done, or what are you doing that makes outdoor learning either easier or safer? I know we've already talked about access via management. Chris is very close to his heart because he implements it. Have you got any examples of any of the benefits or the ease of access of outdoor education that you could share?
Yeah, Chris, I was just going to say one of the obvious or sort of simple things that we've been talking about is teachers being afraid. So I've recently started just helping teachers do their risk assessments, helping them do the paperwork. I've even helped a few students lately. I've made the proposal that we actually get students to do risk assessments for their trips for next year, and I'm hoping that will come through because I've helped a few lately, and they can see the value and why we have to do that. And so I think just making those easy, accessible, providing some staff training, PD day or something where you can say, okay, this is how we do a risk assessment and why. So those sort of things.
Yeah, that's the biggest one that I get asked as a kind of an independent professional when it comes in to teacher training. Schools are asking me, how do we even start? And the first one is, have you got a risk assessment? And they're like, oh no, we're not totally sure. And I think back in the day, risk assessments were used loads and loads, but they were done for the sake of doing them. Whereas actually, when you actually appreciate the value in them, they become brilliant. And on our Arctic expedition, the students get a personal development book, and twice during a 7-day activity, they actually do their own risk assessments on the environment. And exactly what you said, Kenny, like getting them to understand the value of doing risk assessments and the consequences of actions is super powerful stuff. It makes the place safer, makes the students more effective, and it just really increases the ability for you to just push the boundaries of what you can do as well. If you understand the risks, then yeah, you can hang out with crocodiles, local, and wild boar and other, creepy crawlies and things, because the knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and knowledge of risk is a really good one. It's probably, for me, I get asked that a lot. So thank you.
But for me, I think it starts with an idea, and it starts with like empowering the staff to say, look, we'll back you up. Like in all the things that we've discussed today, I agree with everything that everybody said. It's just a question of empowering those staff and helping them and facilitating them, that if you're brave enough, no, rephrase that. If you have the desire to take the kids to the Arctic or to the Zambezi or wherever it is you want to go, is that say, look, this is possible. Other schools do this. I can connect. And that's, I'm not here to beat the drum for Inspired, but like when you're in a big group of schools, it's really easy to email someone saying, look, I'm thinking of doing this. Has someone else within the group done this? And I think that's why networks such as this one that we're in here is that like, we did the classic school sport trip to South Africa, and then so I offered it to everyone, and suddenly 78 children signed up. I was like, oh, right, okay, so I need some more staff. But the thing is if you have that mindset within a school, and I was very lucky that I went to the principal, head teacher, and said, I've got 78 kids here. What am I going to do? He said, well, you're going to take 78 kids, and how are we going to do it? And if you're senior leadership, and there's people like yourselves, there are people who will hold your hand and they will help you and they will like say to you, but it has to start with the genesis of an idea and a safe environment for someone to say, like, I really want to go to do this. And then if we're able to do that and we're able to share that and we're able to nurture that within our staff, because people like us, we can't do it all. We have to have people around us who are going to help us and who are going to do these things as well. I think that's having that. And it sounds a bit wishy-washy and a bit like philosophical, but I think that's my vibe, is that let's just give these staff and empower them to do these things, because these are things that the children will remember for the rest of their lives. I've always said that when you go on school trips, you don't remember getting an A in your test or then this. You remember those shared experiences. That's why we've got the best job in the world, and it's much better than being a regular classroom teacher.
You definitely hit on my second most important point.
Sorry.
After the risk assessment. No, it's dead on. The second one that I always get is how do we go about doing something like this? And I always come back and say, learn from someone else, and if you can, learn from the best. So I was very lucky that when I was a teacher, I went to the head teacher who was on board with what I wanted to do, was to set up an outdoor education department. And I said, these are the qualifications I want, and I want to go and learn off this person here because they're the best in the world at what they do. And with a bit of coercing and looking at the money and paying a bit here and there, I managed to get my way on that, but because I got trained by some of the best people in the world, that then empowered us as a school to run some really, really cool stuff. And I think what you're saying is dead right, Tom. Like, if you've got the expertise in a collegiate or in a group of schools, swap that knowledge around and pass it around, and then empower everybody to then, you know, really push the boundaries of what you're doing and share that knowledge. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, on a very practical level, I really love what you shared, Thomas. Then it's the role of the principal or the senior leadership team to set that person up for success. So, you know, following that 78 kids going to South Africa, you know, is really putting in the time and giving that person or people the time to put everything into place, so that there's no surprises, there's no reasons why that trip will fail. You know, when you choose to support something, especially multi-day trips, especially international trips, it really is the role of the senior leadership to make sure that there's the systems in place and the supports in place that trip will be a success, and parents will rave about it and be super excited for the trip, you know, the next year, wherever that might be. And so, you know, as someone in that role, you know, it's our job always to kind of have that bird's eye view to say, you know, Thomas, it's great, but you can't go that week because there's 3 other things going on this week, and you're going to have a big conflict, and you're going to have parents angry at you. You know, some of those very practical things on just setting trips up for success with good planning can go a long way. Clarity about the trip, lots of communication to all the different stakeholders, and then celebrate like crazy when it goes well.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. So I think we'll probably end it on that note there. What Chris said, that's fantastic. If you've got any things you want to share, post them on the ISN or to Max or we can put that out to the group. And if you guys want to ask me any questions about anything at all, I'm always super willing to help you out if you need anything. And thanks for this discussion. It was really good.